Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News in one of the biggest days of mainstream media shakeups we've seen in a long time. And now, as you guys know, Don Lemon was also fired from CNN after 17 years of service on the same day. So I just want to touch on that really quickly before we get into what's going on at Fox and what's going on with Tucker Carlson. Lemon being out the door, pretty standard procedure. They'd had a big shakeup. They got rid of Zucker. They had moved Don Lemon from primetime to the morning show, and this is an obvious indicator that he was on his way out the door. So that's actually more of a standard thing. The only thing that's notable about it is that Lemon, of course, was fired the same day as Tucker Carlson. By contrast, Tucker Carlson had the primetime slot in Fox News' lineup for a long time. He was averaging the #1 ratings at the network, even though, as of late, he was actually being slightly edged out by Gutfeld. However, that's not this big indicator that you possibly think it is. It's just that Gutfeld, as of late, was doing better than Tucker, and this is likely due to the fact that we're not in a major election season, or there's no giant news that would redirect eyeballs to Carlson, and the Gutfeld show is more of a team-oriented thing rather than an individual. Tucker Carlson tonight, despite slightly falling below Gutfeld as of late in the most recent round of ratings, is Fox's #1 show. They gave him Tucker Carlson Originals. They cater to the guy. He's not the highest paid person because Sean Hannity has been there since the company basically was founded. But overall, the network was very much headed up, at least in terms of its face, by one Tucker Carlson. Hence the shock, hence the awe, hence the speculation. And there is an absolute ton of speculation going on the internet, but I want to throw my hat in the ring and tell you why I think Tucker Carlson was removed from Fox News. Now, you guys are all aware of the Dominion lawsuit. A bunch of people on Fox News talked about how Dominion was supposedly funded by the Venezuelans, how it, helped steal the election and all that jazz. But in reality, in actuality, it turns out what we found out through the Fox News lawsuit and the settlement was that a lot of Fox News hosts did not believe this, and in private, they would talk about how they're essentially airing BS. However, and this is incredibly important, Tucker Carlson likely was not fired due to the Dominion lawsuit. Tucker Carlson internally would actually complain about the coverage of Dominion, the coverage of the 2020 election, and one of the most notable text messages from Tucker Carlson that was revealed in Discovery was him talking about how there are really good people in the audience and they're buying into this, and Tucker does not think it's good for the network to go in that direction. So in terms of the Dominion lawsuit, Tucker Carlson was not amongst the people that were named, and the Dominion lawyers say that they did not have Tucker Carlson being fired as a condition of the settlement.
It was different, and as a text that came out revealed my suspicions, he was looking for ratings bait, purely, and was also looking for power. It was a combination of ratings and power and manipulating the audience, and manipulating also the political system. There was an aspect of, I can pick who the House Speaker is. I can pick who the President of the United States is, or who the Republican candidate's going to be. And I thought that was really dangerous and didn't want that kind of power. I didn't want to have Senate candidates calling me and being very upset, are you going to destroy our whole campaign tonight? Because he could do that. And he would call and tell them that if you don't participate or you don't come on the show, we will destroy you. And I was told to tell that to congressmen sometimes, and I didn't. How can I? That was disrespectful.
Now, the next thing that does come up as a potential option, and it's being shot around by the mainstream media, which is one of the reasons why I'm insanely skeptical of it, is this alleged sexual harassment / discrimination lawsuit against Tucker Carlson tonight, where it is alleged that a producer used anti-Semitic, anti-woman language against this woman. And honestly, even though this is actually more closely related to Tucker himself, I don't think this is actually the real cause or what is behind his sudden firing. This lawsuit already existed. This was something that was filed, was working its way through the process, and Fox News as a company historically would settle way worse claims like this in order to keep them out of the press. If you guys remember, when Bill O'Reilly was finally ousted from Fox News, it was revealed that one woman in particular actually received, for a single settlement against Bill O'Reilly, O'Reilly and Fox News over $32 million. That's $32 million for one person bringing up allegations against Bill O'Reilly, and this was among, by the way, several other allegations brought up against Bill O'Reilly and Fox News during that time period, but specifically that centered around Bill O'Reilly. Now, we should all take a moment to speculate what Fox News possibly was willing to pay $32 million for in a settlement based on what was alleged against Bill O'Reilly. Because again, he had other ones that were settled for other various amounts, but $32 million for one specific allegation seems like Bill O'Reilly must have been doing something crazy. But again, that's just speculation. That's not something that we need to harp on, although $32 million is a lot of money. Now, with that being said, if I were to break this down and tell you what I think the actual reasons were, I think there are two incredibly solid reasons that could lead to Tucker Carlson's sudden firing. And by the way, one of the reasons why I'm saying firing is because even though Fox News put out an initial statement about how Tucker Carlson and them mutually agreed to separate, it seems from all different reporting from all these different insiders who are quoted anonymously, so you could take them with a grain of salt, that Tucker was actually ready to go live Monday night to take down the 60 Minutes Ray Epps segment that they did, essentially running cover for this guy and accusing the right wing and Fox News and Tucker Carlson specifically of ginning up conspiracies against him, conspiracy theories. Now, this I actually think is incredibly crucial because even though Tucker Carlson was not the main driver behind the Dominion lawsuit, the fact is Fox News still settled for $700 million due to the claims made by their hosts. And Tucker Carlson has been somebody who's been pushing a lot of what has been labeled Ray Epps conspiracy theories, that he was either an FBI agent or FBI informant, or somebody who turned state's evidence against other people during January 6th, the darkest day in our democracy's history. In fact, the darkest day in all of democracy's history. Where were you January 6th? I was in a car dealership trying to buy a car, and the guy came up to me and he tried to tell me that the car that I was looking at, which had frame damage, didn't actually have any serious damage. And I was mad. I thought frame damage was serious. And then I looked up on the TV and I saw Democracy Worldwide getting frame damage. Where were you January 6th? Let me know down in the comments, down in the comments, down in the comments. Where were you? Where were you? Now look, the Ray Epps thing, I think it's perfectly warranted to speculate about. Here you have a guy who was talking about on January 5th, the night before, how people needed to go into the Capitol. Remember, this is what the mainstream media has labeled an insurrection, that breach of the Capitol, and that led to a bunch of people who were merely trespassing being prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Out there, I'm probably going to go to jail for it. Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? No! Peacefully! Fed!
To some in the crowd, Epps seemed so over the top he must have been a government agent, a Fed sent to entrap them.
When you said, we have to go into the Capitol, we have to go into the Capitol, what were you thinking?
I said some stupid things.
And then the next day, Ray Epps appears to be directing people towards the Capitol. And since Ray Epps has not been prosecuted for his actions related to January 6th, or at least as far as we know, maybe there were some charges pending or whatever, this would lead a lot of people and has led a lot of people to believe that he's an FBI agent, an FBI informant, or somebody who became a witness for the FBI or the Department of Justice after the fact, essentially becoming a turncloak and getting off scot-free. And in comparison to what other people did on that day, not all other people, some people were breaking glass, some people were committing violence and all of that, but some of the more minor things like trespassing, a lot of people had an issue with this. However, 60 Minutes seems to have been setting up Ray Epps to sue Fox News and members of the right-wing media specifically due to the fact that he is asserting that these claims are false. And one of the things that is often not reported, and by the way, I didn't know this because a lot of right-wing media is not covering this, is that Ray Epps actually never entered the Capitol building himself. So even though he is incredibly suspicious, and I understand the speculation related to him, this might be a situation where there is an explanation in that he said some things, but the Department of Justice feels like since he didn't do even trespassing, therefore they can't prosecute him. Now, I find this incredibly odd because you would think inciting a riot is a crime and that Ray Epps appears to have been trying to gin up hysteria and sending people in that direction, and that would qualify, but this actually could be the explanation for why Ray Epps has not faced prosecution. Also, we haven't gone through all the January 6 cases, so he may appear as a witness or whatever, but I think overall the idea that Epps is specifically an FBI agent is the furthest from being the truth. I think somebody who is recruited, like a confidential informant, is still possible. I think a witness after the fact also still possible, but it could also just be true that this guy wasn't prosecuted because they can't show him breaching the Capitol, and the things that he said, the DOJ appears to be letting go. Again, I don't know the status of people who did not specifically enter the building, and whether or not they face any charges, or a huge portion of them face any charges based on actions outside of the building that weren't specifically violence against the police. We should see what that evidence is going to be, but if Fox News believed that Ray Epps was not somebody who was any of the things that I talked about, and the speculation, which was asserted a lot as if it was fact on Fox News, is just inaccurate and makes them vulnerable to defamation, maybe they were trying to preemptively go after Tucker Carlson before he took on that 60-minute segment and said something that opened them up to future liability.
My thought process, we surround the Capitol, we get all the people there. I mean, I had problems with the election. It was my duty as an American to peacefully protest, along with anybody else that wanted to.
The next morning, January 6th, Epps was out by the Washington Monument, still focused on a single goal.
We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are. It's that direction.
Now again, this isn't saying that Ray Epps isn't suspicious, is completely innocent, or I buy into the 60 Minutes piece, because it is very weird for 60 Minutes to highlight somebody, specifically a January 6er, in a positive light, and this isn't the first time the mainstream media has gone to bat for this guy, but it is an interesting idea. And remember, it's not whether or not you believe it or the majority of people believe it, it's whether or not the higher ups, specifically Rupert Murdoch, specifically those who just paid $700 million to Dominion, believed that this is a possibility that makes the network vulnerable. To me, this is one of the more obvious practical reasons why Tucker Carlson could have been fired, because by all accounts, from what we have so far, it seems like he was going to go in on the 60-minute segment, and Tucker has been somebody who's been going over the line or on the line or whatever, and Fox News could have been worried about that. Now, the other thing that I think is a huge possibility and actually could work in tandem with what I just said is the fact that Rupert Murdoch wants to assert more control over the network. I saw a lot of reporting, which honestly I think is the stupidest reporting possible, because it's so obvious that I feel like it doesn't even need to be reported, that Rupert Murdoch was specifically involved in the firing of Tucker Carlson, which makes sense. Rupert Murdoch runs the company, Tucker Carlson's the #1 host. Typically, the boss is involved in the firings, and even if Rupert isn't involved in the day-to-day operations, if somebody is your #1 host long-term, then obviously it would make sense for Rupert Murdoch to be involved in there. But why would Murdoch actually go for this? Why would he do this? Well, I think obviously he feels like he's lost control of Fox News. Rupert Murdoch has his own agenda, he has his own political beliefs, obviously he wants to make money as a businessman, and honestly, Tucker Carlson has been veering off into territory that no other Fox News host has been veering off to. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why a bunch of people really like Tucker Carlson, because he seems to be one of these only Fox News hosts, and in fact, I'll say it outright, he is the only Fox News host who seems to have abilities to tap the pulse of the internet while also serving the core Fox News audience of elderly people. He's the only one who can cross that threshold, get attention, and bring stories from the internet to the mainstream from both and be loved by both. Tucker Carlson has a huge base of people that are elderly that watch and consume his content like everybody on Fox News, because again, who's watching cable news but the elderly people? Look at the median age of any mainstream media channel's viewership. If you're younger, you're typically getting your information from online, but Tucker Carlson's segments play really well online because he covers things that people are interested in. And Tucker also helps a lot of online creators. One of the most amazing things that you see since his firing is all these different people who talked about moments where Tucker uplifted them. And a lot of people who've worked with Tucker have very positive things to say about him. He has a good reputation, and his producers have the ear to the ground. And by the way, his main producer ended up leaving with him. So it makes sense that Rupert Murdoch, who's not really interested in that online thing, is more interested in catering to his core audience and doesn't want to change the agenda in order to appeal to those online people, would want to assert dominance over Tucker Carlson and regain control over Fox News. Because to be clear, despite the fact that I, and likely you, probably have no interest in Fox News at all whatsoever without Tucker Carlson, this is just not the core of their business, and it's not true overall, because elderly people are watching Fox News. They're watching Jesse Waters, who has ratings that are slightly behind Tucker Carlson. They're watching Gutfeld. They're watching Sean Hannity, who's fourth on the network. You might only be interested in Tucker Carlson. You might feel like there's no appeal from Fox News anymore without him, but overall, Fox News as a brand will endure just based on the fact that they're the only established conservative television network on cable, and that hasn't changed. This is why they survived getting rid of Megyn Kelly. This is why they survived getting rid of Bill O'Reilly, because Fox News overall is bigger than any individual network. On top of that, Tucker Carlson is huge. Tucker Carlson could go off and start his own thing. Remember, Glenn Beck, even though he had a cult-like following over at Fox News, was nowhere near as prominent as Tucker Carlson was on the network. Glenn Beck started The Blaze, and that has recently become a profitable conservative alternative media website because Glenn Beck had enough about him in order to pull people over to The Blaze. Imagine what Tucker Carlson could do by comparison. On top of that, Tucker Carlson could end up at Daily Wire. I've seen Jeremy Boring tweet out a whole bunch about how he wants to onboard him, how anybody would want to onboard him, and considering what they were willing to offer for Steven Crowder, and Tucker Carlson is much bigger than Steven Crowder, you understand why they would be interested and why anybody who has the money for Tucker would be interested in getting him on board. On top of that, Tucker Carlson is going to be fine because Tucker Carlson is the heir to the Swanson food dynasty. His stepmother is one of the people that are behind that. So Tucker has enough money on his own. He's wealthy, separate from being a cable news host, enough to finance his own operation. And one of the reasons why we know this is something, at least in the past, he was willing to do is because this is what he did with the Daily Caller. He started it up with another person, put his own money into it, and then eventually sold his stake in it. But this just goes to show you that Tucker Carlson can decide if he wants to, that he is going to do his own thing, and people will go to him. So Tucker Carlson has a bunch of options. He's going to be okay without Fox News. Not as good as he was with Fox, because with that big network backing him, it's not like he was dependent on big tech that could silence him at any point in time like the rest of us. But overall, he's still going to be fine, and Fox News is still going to endure. I've seen a lot of people talk about how it's over for Fox and all of that, and that's nonsensical, can't get outside of your own context kind of thinking. Again, Fox News's audience is what is called boomers. They're older people that are not going on YouTube and watching alternatives. They're not going on the internet. They're consuming their news via cable TV, and that is not going to change without Tucker. In fact, they're probably going to slot Jesse Waters into that space, and a lot of these elderly people will be happy for him. Remember, Waters was the man on the street guy for Bill O'Reilly, so a lot of these elderly people have seen him essentially grow into his role on air, and it would be satisfying for a lot of them to see him get the primetime slot after all of this time. He's been at the network even longer than Tucker Carlson, who's been around for 13 years, is definitely a staple, is more popular both on Fox News and off Fox News, but the core demographic of people are going to stay with Fox. It's just a fact. You can expect it to hold true, and I am willing to bet money that even the temporary dip in the stock price of Fox will eventually rebound, especially as we get into election season. So my overall takeaway is that Tucker Carlson was definitely fired, 100%. And he was fired probably largely due to the fact that Rupert Murdoch is trying to show people that Fox is bigger than any individual host, which, by the way, is in fact true. It's just a fact. Whether you like it or not, whether you like Fox or not, you can't ignore that they're an institution. And I also think that the potential for increased liability over the Ray Epps situation specifically, because that's what's being set up by the rest of the mainstream media as a way to go after Tucker, and it's undeniable, is possibly one of the factors that led into this decision being made Monday morning. Now, as far as authoritarians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calling for Tucker Carlson to be yanked off the air,
and do you think media organizations or social media platforms should be accountable for the role, for being platforms for incitement?
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
And then following her call for the Congress to regulate Fox News, aka her political opponents, in this authoritarian manner, she then celebrated the removal of Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. What I will say, though, is while I'm very glad that the person that was arguably responsible for some of the largest, driving some of the most amounts of death threats and violent threats, not just to my office, but to plenty of people across the country. I also kind of feel like I'm like waiting for the cutscene at the end of a Marvel movie after all the credits have rolled. And then you see like the villain's like hand reemerge out to grip over like the end of a building or something. But deplatforming works, and it is important. And there you go. Good things can happen.
Well, I think that's absolutely disgusting and should be disqualifying as a member of Congress. I don't think the pressure from the Democratic Party is what led Rupert Murdoch to act. Rupert Murdoch is, by all accounts, somebody who's very serious about Republican politics. He's somebody who wants to set the agenda for the Republican Party. Fox News functions as the media arm of the Republican Party, so the idea that he's going to take direction from the Democratic Party is highly unlikely. This is a guy who does conservative news media all over the world, and I don't think that this is a huge factor, although it is very coincidental that Ocasio-Cortez was calling for the censorship of Fox News specifically, and then Tucker Carlson ultimately ended up getting pulled off air. Now look, more will come out eventually, obviously, and we will ultimately find out over time what the real reasons were behind this, and obviously everything I said so far could be thrown asunder if Tucker Carlson declares his candidacy for president of the United States. And by the way, if Tucker were to do that, I actually think that Tucker is the only person who can beat President Trump in a Republican primary. And one of the reasons why is because Trump won the 2016 presidential primary due to the fact that he had an overwhelming name recognition advantage against all the other candidates. He was famous and on TV for a long period of time, so everybody knew who he was, and this is also true for Tucker Carlson. On top of that, Tucker Carlson can Tucker face at Trump's insults, and I think that might be the only thing on a debate stage that is effective against President Trump. On top of that, Tucker Carlson is not lacking for financial resources to go after this guy, to spend the money, and he has a lot of people that would get behind him over President Trump because President Trump has a ton more baggage. On top of that, it's kind of hard to argue that Tucker Carlson is not a better debater than President Trump because among the two, it's just factually true that Tucker Carlson has thousands upon thousands of hours of debating people on television in front of a large audience. So I think these combination of factors give Tucker Carlson probably the best chance possible to beat President Trump in the primaries, and he could run as a truer populist right-wing candidate, and he can now make the case that he was silenced by a coordinated effort against him. So I actually think that if Tucker runs, he definitely has a chance. He has a chance of beating President Trump. And if you actually put him on the stage against Joe Biden and he's Tucker facing for a national audience, I actually think there's a legitimate chance that he could be president if he decided to go with that path. Now, that being said, I still think it's unlikely. I think Tucker's going to move on to his own thing, maybe take a break for a while. Who knows? But yeah, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, show them by leaving a like. If you want, you could subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social media. Support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Tucker Carlson being pulled off of Fox News. Till next time.